So we're going to do Goth going on Tilt. Paul plays the easy system. That's a system I did a video on about a year ago, I guess. Dor plays the Randy Scandi. That opening's fine. Let's get some bad reviews. Get some bad reviews. And we're going to go on, and then we'll finish off way later with Ding. All right, let's get it going. I'm not going to forget to switch scenes. Okay, so this game is a great example of, by the way, I assume this game was played for real, i.e. over the board in Charlotte. There's this new Charlotte Chess Club. It's not that new, but I feel like it's really kind of established itself. They're playing over the board events now. And at some point, I'm gonna go down there. I went down there before it really opened. Mike Klein lives there, famous chess.com guy, friend of mine. Anyways, FM. Anyway, I went there. That was the last time I was there, I don't know, 2013. Anyways, I want to go down there. This was played at this club. I think it was fairly recent. And this is Goth Mog. And he plays, let me just say, I was talking earlier about how people with lower ratings are putting in hectic sequences of moves. And this, to me, is an example of it. White plays perfect theory. And I think knows its theory. There's even that. Knows its theory. I didn't know it was theory, and I played the Catalan. and then after the theoretical discussion kind of dies down, I felt like Goth played at least the first sequence of moves after that, GM level. So we'll talk about that. Here we go. This move is well known for decades as a way to kind of mess with White in the Catalan to get him to move the bishop there. A minor achievement. Okay, b6, rook d1, knight d7, bishop f4. There's more than one way for White to do this, but this all makes a lot of sense. Bishop b7, and various moves possible here. To my just naive, untheoretical mind, knight c3 makes a lot of sense. White plays knight e5. Okay. And, you know, even though this is theory, it's a very intense position. In general, White does not want to trade the knight on e5. He does want to open his bishop up, though. And what he's claiming with this knight e5 is that if Black ever takes it, Black will pay a price with de and then e4. Okay, so here we go. Rook c8, knight c3, knight h5. Now bishop returns to the square where it belongs, where it wanted to be from the first, that Black moved us away from. Okay, so now Black plays a natural move that takes Goth out of book. Look at that. We're pretty hectic theory, and it's not like easy stuff, you know, like there's a lot going on here. Bishop d6. I'm sure if you look in the database, some strong players would have played bishop d6. It's just such a natural move for Black to do. And then White has to make a decision, right? First, like real decision for what Goth has to do. And I think Goth played it well. Knight d7, and let's say knight d7 is a compromise because we didn't actually want to trade that thing. But the advantage is we get to do all this joyful stuff quickly while the knight on h5 still owes us some time. Let me look up, I got the game. Where's my Goth? Goth was rated 2075 and Big Piano. By the way, maybe I'm wrong about this being over the board. I don't know. I think he says, hold on, can you just, so maybe I don't know. Maybe Goth is in the chat and can tell us. But in any case, the online open. Okay. Cool. All right, so it was actually online. I lied about it. But I do know that they are one of the people doing real games, and the time control is 70 plus 10 seconds. Okay, let's go back. Boom. DE4, 94. And I guess what we should say is the drama for black in playing bishop d6 was that, hey, buddy, it's it's kind of a target here. Not kind of, it is a target. So he spends another tempo, bishop e7. And here white has several tries. And again, I feel like Goth was out of his book and everything, but he's playing his next move, GM level. Let me just say, I think this is a very common structure people can get, and they can lose their way in. And eventually white does lose his way, but it's hard to find a plan. And in general, what we could say is, imagine black getting just a couple moves, obviously the knight's coming back, so we only have that one tempo. And also we have to eventually worry about black playing c5. So that is, boom, what he does. And he writes that the computer likes a few other lines better. I like this a lot, c5, because it gives your game a clear notion about what you're doing, right? You are saying the bishop on b7 is poor, and you're saying that the c6 pawn will be a permanent target. Knight f6. And now this is the first move that you make that looks a little sus to me with bishop g5. I think ultimately it's still a fine move. There's probably nothing wrong with it. But it didn't feel right to me. It didn't feel right to me. But honestly, it's not like black, proved anything against this move. So, right, knight f6, bishop e3. Stockfish has some weird bishop f4 stuff, but knight f6, bishop e3, very pleasant position. Again, there's going to be no blockade of the d5 square with the knight. Let's put that on the board. This is just my human sense of the position, right? No blockade of d5, permanent weakness. And, if once we have some time, we're going to start pushing. Okay. And it's just terrible. It's always terrible. Yeah, so that's why this game, really good. And I think, even with this move, the only real question I could end up asking was, like, is knight f2 somehow a savior move for black? But you correctly write, I think, that bishop g7 still looks really tasty for you. Yeah, still looks really tasty. And in general, all the complications should go your way because this thing is so abysmal. So boom, boom, boom. Looks great. h6. And it's funny, should he have played g6? It's a hard life either way. Rook ac1. And now he makes this committal move. And you say you didn't like it? Fair enough. I don't know. I don't know what to do for the dude, though. I don't know. I think it's a hard life. Okay. b5. Queen c3. Good move. Queen c7. And here's where, you've played 22 beautiful moves here, Goth. So before whatever we say about the game, you put a great positional squeeze on it. And let me say the c5 move, there's a lot of classic GM games from way back in the day where this was employed. And so, you're following like a deeper idea through, and it's really nice. And it's usually not something people do unless they've kind of seen it. Okay, so here's where you start to lose the thread. And I think that first of all, you felt obliged to do something active here. And the main thing that's a little bit hard to understand, I don't know, it's hard to psychologically pull off, is you gotta say to yourself, I think, that you gotta say something like, hey, I'm doing one thing in this game, just one, and that is preventing the bishop on b7 from ever getting out, right? And when you look at it, it's like, oh, right, there's no way out for that thing. And so I think a way to just think about the game is to tell yourself a story like, well, this bishop controls a bunch of squares that black simply has no access to, a huge amount of squares. I mean, it's monstrous, right? And so a way to conceive of the game is to say, look, I'm up a piece in a lot of ways in this position. And if I can just keep him bottled down, I should be able to essentially play the position as if I'm up a piece, you know? So at some point, busting through on the king's side. And to say to yourself, I think like if a5, there's a variety of things you could do, but probably just a3. Just stop him cold, man, you know? And if he wants to break out, I mean, maybe he should, you know, sack a pawn or something. Maybe he should, but it's going to be a hard life. And if you want to play b4, you can also do that. Also a very nice position for you. Okay, so a4, and the big problem of that, of course, is you are enabling the escape of the bishop. Okay. Would I consider f4 instead of queen c3? No. No, I thought queen c3 was fantastic. I really liked it. And why? Because I want to make sure he can't do something like b4, a5, anything like that. And I don't know what the rush with f4 is either, right? I'm not worried about him playing e5. And honestly, queen c3 also deals with e5. Now, let's answer that. Why am I not worried about e5? Because he would be opening the doors of his house while it's not, before it's gotten cleaned. You know, you don't want to invite people into your house before it's cleaned. It's bad form. And when you do it, things go wrong. Things go wrong. Nasty things like rooks end up on d6. It's not a good thing. All right, so here we go. a4, bishop a6, bishop c2. Now, I think this is ultimately not the worst move. Oh, by the way, your opponent arguably does a clever psychological thing to you here. You write correctly that the guy should play BA so that he can achieve this. Absolutely true. But it's almost like your opponent, I don't want to give him too much credit, but it's almost as if he understands that you want some action with the A pawn, right? Because if not, like as you write, you should just play a5. And again, you revert to this strategy that I outlined before, which is, hey, let's just prevent dude from ever moving. All right, bishop c2, rook b8, queen d3. By the way, I think if I was black, I would really consider sacking the pawn with b4. b8, and again, a5. a5 would be a very strong move here. Very strong move. Yeah. Queen e3, and then here queen e5. And right, like, yeah, you didn't appreciate that the bishop was getting out. And once it gets out, it's a very angry man. So, okay. We're now going to enter phase 2. So for the most part, even up to here, even though maybe things have gone, a little shaky, you've played beautifully, dude. Just an amazing positional game. And right, this, now all of a sudden we don't know who's better and why after queen e5, right? We just don't know anymore. Dora's asking, I'm not sure what about a5. Let me point out, let's talk about a5 a second. Conceptually, well, first of all, just tactically, you can't take the thing because of rook a1. You can't play b4 because it takes. If I get one more move, I'm going to play b4. And you can say to yourself, well, what are you doing, Cry? I'm shutting it down. I'm shutting it down. And it's a very simple philosophy. If the bishop can't get out, I am up a piece on the king side. And I'll do fun little things like queen e3 and h4 and pop him and drop him. I'm up a piece, dog. I'm up a piece. And maybe even then later, the queen e5 thing. That truly might still happen. That's one of the things I can hang over his head. All right, now we're going to go phase 2. I'm going to wonder how bad it is. Boom. And now I have a theory about what happens from here on out. And that is two things. I definitely feel you're now on tilt because you had such a nice position earlier and now you're just going to do this thing that we've seen, oh my God, so many strong GMs do it as well as weak people. That you're going to be like, dude, I must still be better. I still got to be better in this position. I got to be better. And then you're going to make moves to prove you're better, right? And then that's how you're going to end up losing this game. So at some point, by the way, everybody suffered from this one. At some point along the way here, you needed to say to yourself, wake up, dude. Wake up. It's time to start playing for a draw. And then I guess we can criticize some basic rook endgame stuff here too. And yes, I want you to play b3 after instead of taking. Simple reason, I don't want you to activate the rook. All right, this is a frisky move. Snip. That's a frisky move. Interesting. I mean, that's at least an interesting move. And, you know, if I was black here, you know, maybe I would recognize that objectively it's still somehow equal, but I'd just be thrilled, man, because now I'm going to give you the business, right? At some point, the A and the C pawns are going to be traded, and I'm going to have a chance for the 4 versus 3 ending. So here we go, rook c3. Rook d5. Very nice move. I'm impressed. I'm impressed. Boom, boom. Okay. So now we're suffering as white. And what you do now is you become obsessed with the rook f3 trick. And that's why you play rook g4. And the sad thing is, I think from a practical point of view, you need to say, bro, it is time to trade the C pawn for the A pawn, right? So, I think what you say, first of all, is that's a draw. And you also say rook f3 might be an improvement because then you can induce this weakness and then take on a5, right? And that's definitely a draw. So you have to have confidence, though, in your ability to hold that position, right? And I think actually an interesting thing about the 4 versus 3, let's just say we don't play rook f3 and we get this position. An interesting thing about it is, for a weak GM like me, it's a clear advantage. You know, but for the very strong, it's just drawn. Of course, if I was black, I'd work. There is a problem though, like right here, and that is if we can prevent h4, we have an advantage, and right away, so the key move, g5, and we're able to stop h4 from happening. And that's one of the things that white probably needed to even think about putting on the table before you go into the ending. Why? Because in general, in these endings, it's kind of a known thing that if you can achieve h4, h5, if the opponent with the pawn, with the extra pawn, can play h5, h4, you have really good drawing chances. Now, theoretically, it's still a draw there, but then it is, in my mind, better than just clear advantage. Like, it's just white's on a razor's edge when that goes down. Okay, let's finish this game, g4. And now we're close to losing, I assume. And f3 was a mistake, but it's already like, I can feel your tilt. I can feel it. Very nice. Very nice. And the game's done. And the last part of the game played very nice from Black. I liked his finish a lot. So Goth, one of the things I say on the show a lot is that endgames are the difference, especially now. Like, because think about it, you were able to play 22 some moves and you're only rated 2,000 something. Oh my God, you're playing super GM level for 22 moves, man. Ding Lorenz, Catalan's got nothing on you, buddy. It's got nothing on you, man. But then the end game, right? There's a psychological element to your loss, and then also, let's call it a knowledge element. Okay. How in the world did this happen? That's right. Okay, let's go on. Paul in New Jersey. So, actually, he's no longer, he's rebranded himself. Paul has been one of the longest running people on this show, going back years. I've never met Paul. Someday I'm going to meet Paul. But I've looked at his games, and Paul is a pessimist, never believing in his position. And he, in an effort to believe more in his position, he rebranded himself from Paul in New Jersey to Paul 184. So here we go. So, I'll tell a little story. So about more than a year ago, slightly before the pandemic hit, I got asked to do a series, and they were like, dude, you can do it on whatever you want. As this iChess people, kind of I don't know those people, and I just did it, and I thought it'd be a cool thing to do. Anyways, I did a whole thing before I did the easy system, and I realized I misnamed this whole thing because, in fact, Paul doesn't play the easy system. He plays the hard system. So before I came up with the easy system, which you can learn literally in 15 minutes, I did this whole interesting deep dive on the classical advance. And I was interested in doing it partly on the idea of space, of what is the space advantage and how do you use it. And so if you understand how the space advantage works, then this kind of thing is going to be a good exercise in addition to a functioning opening. So knight h6, and I said, right, we don't want to take the thing. It might be a playable move. I've played this many times as black, and bishop h6, yeah, it's one of the moves. But b4 is what I'm going to call the system move, right? We want space. Snip, snip, knight f5, bishop b2, bishop e7. Black is playing beautiful, by the way, up to this point. Bishop d3. And right, this is where things get pretty hot and heavy. In this position, bishop d7 is probably more flexible for black. But bishop e7 is playable. I'm going to say bishop d3 is also playable. And this is where Paul says he begins to drift. One of the appeals, by the way, of this position, just on a, let's call it a abstract level, is, let me just say, I played this position like, in fact, this precise position I had against Alexander Shabalov. Won a nice game as black to get my GM title back in the day. And the bizarre thing about it is, obviously, white is down in development. But the interesting claim that white is making is, I will push you back because I'm going to cut you out of squares, right? I'm going to cut you out of squares. Got a question about bishop d7. The idea of bishop d7, if g4, is to play this stinker of a move. And it looks ridiculous, but from there, the knight is dreaming of several squares: knight g6, knight c8, and knight d5. And you say to me, Cry, what are you talking about, knight d5? Well, we're going to see in this game too, there's ideas of knight a5, knight c4, then you got to take me, then the knight pounces. Boom. It's a very deep move, knight fe7. Okay, so here we go. Bishop d3, bishop d7, and here you castled, giving him the pawn. And I think in my mind, the reason I labeled this the easy system is in the easy system, we give him the pawn too. I think now that you've committed to bishop d3, I think you should take the thing. And we're going to get zip, snap, forcing bishop e6. And now you have a couple interesting moves. Knight a4 castles among them. Knight e2 is also kind of an interesting move. But the point is he doesn't have time to pull off a5 because you're threatening d5. And that's why bishop d7, I wasn't 100%. I wasn't 100% on that move. Castles comes to mind for me, for black. Okay, let's look. Castles, knight fd4. Now listen to this pessimism. I was a pawn down with no compensation. No, buddy, you got some compensation. Come on, of course you have some compensation. The knight's coming to business. The bishop has freed its scope. No, are you worse? Probably, but you definitely have compensation. Rook c8, rook c1. And you give that a question mark. How bad is it? Oh, that's probably not that bad. Now, interesting things are happening. All right, you wrote knight b3. You did knight b3, and I don't like it. I got a couple questions. I'll just tell you what I would be worried about if I was white. So, knight d4, knight d4, knight c4. Does it work? I don't know. But that would be what would be I was worried about. Snippos, snappos. That would be my concern. It's a little frightening. You definitely have compensation. Yeah. Okay. So, knight b3. Now he snips. Knight a5. Good job. Good job on his part. Queen d1. Now he starts to blow it. You're right. You expected knight c4 and absolutely... Wait, there's a reason he didn't play knight c4, isn't there? Right, isn't the problem with knight c4 you just take the thing? You go pop, and this guy falls, right? So he does this. Good move. You got compensation, buddy. You want a piece. You want a piece, boss. Did you lose this game, Paul? Did you lose this game, buddy? Well, I can't complain about a lot of this, dude. Okay, Paul. I feel like every time Paul gives us a game, it's like something weird's going to happen. Now, you're right. I was certain that I would win this endgame. In fact, I was peeved that my opponent didn't resign. I'm a little peeved too, Paul. I'm a little peeved as well, man. I'm peeved as well. All right, I'm peeved. I'm looking at this thing now, Paul. What are we doing here? Boom. I'm just going to keep moving until I scream. Okay. I'm just going to keep moving until I scream. I'm just going to keep moving until I scream, Paul. Am I screaming yet? I don't know. Like, what are we saying here? We're saying this has become difficult? Are we really saying that? What happened here? You took on b6, buddy. All right, hold on. My head's about to explode. My head's going to explode. Paul, I don't get it, bud. I don't get it. Really? Maybe you're right. Maybe the gods have gone crazy, buddy. Is that what we're saying? Bro, if you lose this. Well, you took on b6, and then I don't think you're winning it. I mean, maybe even then you're winning it. I don't know. That's going to be difficult. Oh, man. Did you lose this game, boss? He did. He does end up drawing the game. All right, let's feel his pain a little bit. Let's feel his pain. King a5. Let's read what he said. It looked to me like black had a fortress. I didn't see any way to sack a pawn or a two to get over there. All right, let's talk about the obvious problems before we try to crack this thing. Bishop b4 is the only zugzwang to keep the guy off a5. But the second we do it, we don't have the bishop, we don't have the ability for the king to advance to b4. So that's a real big bummer. Advancing f5 means nothing. He just sits there. Oh, this is very painful, Paul. This is like you're making daddy scream here. You're really hurting me here, Paul. Oh. I'm gonna cry. I'm gonna cry. Okay, let's go back. And let's just ponder here for a second. Wow. Never resign, huh? I'm losing my mind. Hold on. Boom, boom. Now, if you had done at any point here, isn't it winning if you just go like tacos? Let's say tacos. And that's got to be winning, Paul. I'm sorry, man. Those are my assumptions. Those are my assumptions. Paul, I gotta admit, let's just say, it is a kind of interesting, depression aside, it's an interesting ending where your pawns on e5 and g5 are killing your bishop. The Capablanca rule in force, right? And then you're guilty of moving too fast, thinking it was simply going to be winning. And I am too. I just assumed you were winning, boss. Oh, that one hurt. That one really hurt. Nicholas Tice, you just came at the moment of extreme pain for our friend Paul in New Jersey, also known as Paul 1E4. Oh, I can't look. Paul, go do my easy system against the French, buddy. You did this. Let me just say, you beat this dude. You beat this dude after things went wrong in the opening. That's grounds for optimism. All right, this is Dora's game. I think it's a real game against a woman named Yulia in the Israeli third league. And I don't know why this is so bad. My beloved Queen D8, Scandinavian. Okay. Boom, boom. Boom, boom. 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 Good. Castles and bishop f3. Okay. So what that is, Dor, is the weenie move, right? It's a weenie move for you to play bishop f3. It is sometimes necessary to make a move like that. But here you're not necessitated to do it, but we understand what you want. You've got a structure that you want to play, right? You want to follow Capablanca's rule. Put the pawns in the opposite color of the unopposed bishop. Your own bishop on f8 is good. And this is kind of like Scandi 101, right? Scandi 101. Rook e1, bishop e7. And now the question is, how should White play it? And here I disagree a little bit with what you wrote. You wrote knight e4. It's not a bad move overall, but it shows my opponent doesn't understand the opening. Any trade is in Black's favor. White needs to keep the dynamics, otherwise she's strategically losing. No, I disagree. Now, there's an important difference. If White's pawn were on c4, we could, your claim to the dynamics being going against White would make a lot more sense. And the reason for that is if the pawn were on c4, the pawn on d4 would be a permanent weakness. In this position, though, White can just say, hey, let's trade it off. I'll get my natural two bishops advantage. I'll play c3, and I will be better. And she is right. Knight d7, c3. Good. And it's now, let's read what you wrote. It's actually the engine best move, which is puzzling, since I know that c4 or knight g3 that keeps the dynamic should be better practically. No, Dort, it's very important. What she is doing is she's doing the same thing you're doing. She's putting her pawns in the opposite color of her good bishop, which is the bishop on f3. And later, she should even be looking to play the pawn on a2 to a3. There's some famous games, many famous games by very strong players that use this same idea. c4, it's a thought, but especially because it's taking on risk, no need for her to do that. And yeah, this is absolutely correct. And I think what you're doing is you're confusing the position with where the pawn's already on c4 with this position where the pawn's in c3. She is doing so far everything correct to punish you for you giving up the bishop early, right? Boom, 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 boom. g6, question mark. I don't know. I don't know if it's so bad. I think in general, you're going to want to put that pawn there anyway, right? You're going to want to put it there anyway. And you're kind of tricking her in a way because the bishop, I don't think, really actually wants to go to h6. And why? Because one of the key, how do I want to call it, tricks or ideas for White is to say, hey, I want to keep both bishops, you know? And bishop h6 doesn't ruin that idea, but it's going to set you up for, it's going to make it harder to avoid you getting a trade of those bishops, right? We'll see that in the game as well. So, right, White needs to avoid that kind of thing. And I want to criticize, if I'm going to criticize her play, I think this queen d3 stuff is a little bit mechanical, right? And I think you want to play g6 anyway. So moves like queen e2 and a3, those are the moves that really appeal to me. I definitely think White is clearly better. And we've been doing actually Endgame Sensei, which we took a week off last week because Mr. Bruce was on vacation. We're going to come back, holy moly, I think tomorrow. We're doing Endgame Sensei, and we've looked at a couple, two bishops versus the odd couple being the bishop and the knight. We've, played out the practical consequences of that a time or two. And there's an interesting claim that a lot of these positions are not just better for White, but just lost for Black. It's an intense claim. It's an intense claim. But if you study enough games, it becomes a rough deal. And the other practical problem for Black here, if White understands it, is just to say, hey, any pawn move you make, I'm very thankful for. I'm very thankful for. Actually, I had a very similar endgame against Kamsky First round U.S. Championship 2004 was his first comeback game, And that game was a draw, but also he was very cautious, very similar position about moving the pawns forward. I should have. I was a weenie there, Dor. I should have beat the dude. Okay, here we go. She doesn't really know what to do. I'm not a huge fan of a5. I'm not a huge fan. I think she should now play rook ad1, bishop c1. If you play a4, just play a3. We want all of our pawns on black squares. A little frisky. And that was good. And so you correctly say that if she plays h5, you have bishop g5. And that is certainly the problem here. She should play a3 here. The pawn on b2 is not that big of a thing. She can always put the bishop back on c1. Should she have put the rook on d1 first? Yes. Yes. Good move. And so one of the things I would just criticize White's play is, I think if you can conceptualize it like this, since White didn't understand that her main advantage was the two bishops, what she ended up doing was doing this thing I can remember doing as a kid, being like, well, geez, the only thing I know to do here is to like play for mate on the king side. And now you get this very important trade, right? And with the knight, you have now chances to mess with her some. And she should play a3, after which I still think she's better. Yeah, she's still better after a3. But she's trying to mate you again. Okay. Good move. And let's say the obvious. In her trying to mate you, she's just giving you the H file. And you have a nice trick with bishop a4, queen c1. I like that one. That's a nice trick. Rook e1, a3. Good. And I don't know about double exclam, because to me, like the whole idea of you pushing the a pawn was to push a3. And I just wanted her to play a3. Again, Capablanca rule. Put the pawns in the opposite color. Good. Good. And now we're in a situation, you know, where we can start talking about the knight being better than the bishop. And a simple rule that I like a lot is the knight will become better when we have local weaknesses, right? Why? Because the knight can touch both colors. So now, yeah, you're dancing all over her, dude. Boo, dang. Nice move. Dang, take it easy, Dor. Take it easy, man. No fun. No fun, Dor. So cruel. I think you're winning this, buddy. That's what I think. My guess is it shouldn't have been this hard. Wait, Dor, what happened, buddy? What happened, man? All right, it's time pressure. We're not going to criticize it too much. All right, over. Yeah, very nice game, Dor. And I think one of the cool things about it is that there was some positional misunderstandings that you had, and you didn't even have to pay the price, right? The price being losing the game usually for a positional understanding. There are many classical games you can look at in that kind of structure. I feel Carlsen played a couple of those games where he played bishop g4 takes f3 with a very similar idea that what you're doing. And the real difficulty when you do it is to play with your pieces, because you're never allowed to move your pawns off the light squares, right? Okay.